everyone, and welcome back. In my last video where I talked about my C-section birth stories, I actually got a question from one of you guys asking me for more information about what the recovery from a C-section is actually like, as well as some products and things that I would use to help me with recovery. So let's just jump right into it. There's a few misconceptions about C-sections that I wanted to talk about first. What exactly is the recovery from a C-section like? I've gotten lots of questions of, well, since you had a C-section, especially a scheduled C-section, does that mean you don't have the cramping that usually happens after you give birth? What does the bleeding look like? Do you even deal with any of that? And so I wanted to clear that up. So with a vaginal delivery, you have things that you may need to recover from, whether you tore or had stitches or just general soreness and things like that. You obviously would not have that with a C-section because there was an incision in your abdomen and that's how they took the baby out. But I will say there are still some similarities as far as recovery down in the nether regions. One is that you still do have a lot of heavy bleeding afterwards, and that is because the uterus still needs to flush everything out after you've had a baby. So while during a C-section, the doctor does remove the baby and then remove the placenta, your uterus still has to do all of the work of shrinking down, making sure the lining is sloughed off and that everything is cleaned out and ready to go back to normal. Which leads me into my next thing about a C-section recovery, and that is the cramping. Just like with a vaginal delivery, your uterus is gonna go from this big back down to this big. So there's gonna be some cramping involved. So those afterbirth cramps, postpartum cramps that you hear about, those still happen with a C-section, just like they would with a regular vaginal delivery. Okay, so those are the two big things about recovery that I wanted to point out. Obviously, there's some differences from a vaginal birth, like you have an incision versus the baby coming out vaginally. You do have the steri strips, or maybe you have stitches or things like that that need to heal. The mesh underwear, you're gonna need those mesh underwear. You're still gonna need the big pads and the diapers to help with the bleeding. Definitely loose fitting clothes. You don't want anything tight around your waist after having a C-section because that just won't be comfortable, especially in the first few weeks after birth. So when I get home, I like to use granny panties. Now the hospital does give you those big mesh underwear, and I will use those during the first few hours after delivery and while I'm in the hospital. But as soon as I get home, I transition to my own underwear. This brand here is the Hanes Signature Cotton Breathe. I got them in a size medium, but I also have them in a size large, and then I have them in a size small as well. So I always recommend, since this is my third C-section and I've been through this before, get different size underwear so that as your belly shrinks back to its normal size, you can transition your underwear as well, because even though you might start feeling better, your incision is gonna take the full 8 weeks to feel good. And for some women that might even be longer. Like with my first pregnancy, I remember I was 6 months out and I still had some sensitivity. So definitely get the high-waisted granny panties so that nothing is pushing on that incision side, so you give yourself enough room to breathe, and then also get different sizes so that as you go back down to pre-baby weight, your underwear can transition with you. As far as those big diapers that you have to wear, again, I use what the hospital gives me while I'm there recovering. But when I get home, I transition out of those diaper things into these bad boys. This is the Poise pads. I get the Ultimate Supreme size 6. And believe me, if you're a first-time mom, then you know you're gonna need this. If you're not a first-time mom, you know what I'm talking about. And just like with the vaginal delivery, C-section deliveries, you're still gonna have a lot of heavy bleeding for the first week or two after having your baby. I like these, they're the thick ones. I made the mistake during my first pregnancy of getting the thin extra absorbent. no, 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 no. Those do not work. You will have leaks and it will be a big mess and it will be nasty. Get the ones that are thick. They're like a diaper. They cover everything. These will be the most comfortable for those first few weeks after you get home from the hospital. And for the cramping that I mentioned, I have something here. It's from Wish Garden. It's called After Ease for Pregnancy. Now, I've actually never used this before, but a friend of mine swears by it. She used it with all 3 of her pregnancies. And so she gifted me what she had left so that I could try it out. So this is something new that I'm actually gonna be incorporating into my recovery. But basically it's just like a homeopathic, all natural thing to kind of help ease the cramping sensation as your uterus is shrinking back down to size. And then last but certainly not least, you're gonna need something to help hold everything together. Whether you have a vaginal delivery or a C-section delivery, there's this really weird sensation after you have a baby where you've gone from carrying so much weight in front of you to suddenly there's just nothing. That can be really unnerving for a lot of women. It feels sort of like this emptiness, or like your insides have spilled out. I've heard all kinds of things, like it's just like this gap that's there. For me, it's been more of an issue of balance. My muscles just aren't used to not having to support that weight in front anymore. And then with a C-section, since you have the incision, for me anyways, it's always been really awkward to try and stand up straight right after having a baby. One, because of that weird feeling of not having the baby attached to my abdomen anymore, but also because I've got that incision. It does burn. It does feel kind of like if I were to stand up straight, it might open up, which it won't. Still, that feeling is there in your mind. So what really, really helps with that is having some sort of brace, especially the first week after having your C-section. This is one of the braces that I got from the hospital. I got this one, this exact one I got during my first pregnancy and my second. It's so long. But you basically just wrap this thing around you. It's got some Velcro here, and then it just attaches wherever you need it to attach. Where I live in Texas, they give you these at the hospital. Doesn't cost anything extra. It's part of your hospital bill. I don't know if that's what it's like where you live, but I will say this is a nice affordable option because you don't have to invest any money. It's free, it's there, it will work. However, not the most comfortable. It's very tall, so unless you have a very tall waist, it might not feel the greatest. You can't really sit in this thing too well. And because it's so long, you're constantly having to like, okay, I gotta stand up, I gotta wrap it around myself, and then, oh, I wanna sit down, so I gotta unwrap it. And that's just a lot of work to do when you're recovering from major surgery and you're feeding a newborn baby like every 2 hours. This is one option. For this pregnancy, I decided to try something a little more refined. This is a slimming belt from Lucy V. Again, I haven't tried this yet, so you'll kind of get the gist of whether or not I recommend it once I've actually had my baby. She's still cooking in there, as you can see. And I haven't even taken this thing out of the package, but this is what it looks like. So let's just unbox it together, shall we? But I like this because look at that. It's not yards and yards of material. Also, the Velcro is in 3 separate spots so that if your stomach maybe has not shrunk completely in the middle section, but it has near the top, and definitely you don't want a lot of pressure on your C-section incision in the bottom, you can use each of these little Velcros, I'm assuming of course, to kind of adjust it to the tightness that will be most comfortable for you. It also has helpful little pockets in here, so you could stick like ice packs or heating pads, whatever you want to put on your belly. That will help with the cramping. It will also help with the incision pain. And I'm seeing here there's 1 and then 2 pockets where you can stick things like that. And it looks like you just put this part to your back and then fold it over. And last but not least, my recommendation when recovering from a C-section is to have all of these items in a nice basket like this, just easy to access. You can put it in your bathroom if that's where you're gonna be needing access to it the most. Wherever you're gonna be set up in your house for recovery. You can have this on the counter, that way you're not digging through different cabinets trying to find each of these individual items. And you can also add other little goodies like belly lotions and all of that other fun postpartum stuff that you may be needing or wanting when you recover from your delivery. Okay, so I hope this answered your question, and also if any of you out there watching had these same questions, I hope this answered your question. If you have more questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'd be happy to answer them. I hope you all are having a great day, a fantastic day, and I will see you soon. Bye!